All right. Welcome to the second test video of Dandelion recorded content. Today is Saturday, so we're going to be doing some sound design. Um, we're going to dive into a few things here. I'm going to play around with some bass sounds as well as some cinematic effects. I'm thinking about making a cinematic drone and some cinematic effects as well as some atmospheric effects that I'm planning to use in some tracks. And then we'll also dive into creating some bass sounds, like I said, some wave tables to import into Serum. Um, let's actually start with that. So, you're going to see my sound design process here, and one of the biggest keys to the Dandelion sound design process is designing wavetables in Citrus. Citrus is a frequency modulation synthesizer. It can do other things. It can be used for subtractive synthesis as well. But the reason I love Citrus is it is, I think, just the most powerful frequency modulation synthesizer on the market. So the way frequency modulation works is we have operators. An operator is just um, basically a sound output thing. Um, yeah. So here you can see this is a sine wave, a very basic shape. We can use these controls here to shape custom waveforms. So we can move this from a sine to a triangle to a sol to a square. If you don't know what all of those sound like, actually, let's give you a little idea. These are all the most basic waveforms. So here's a sine. It's literally just a single harmonic. In other words, a single note with no additional harmonic content. So if you think of a waveform as, say, a pyramid or a tower, let's call it a skyscraper, a sine wave is just a single floor, nothing else. A square, actually, well, let's move on to a sol. A sol, there's a sol. Sorry if that's loud. A sol is probably one of the most common waveforms in electronic music. Like, for instance, if we were to give it multiple voices, there you have a hypersol. That's what we use in pad stacks. That's how you make pads. So there you have a sol wave. And then a square wave is similar to a sol wave, but it has just, instead of every harmonic in the wave series, it has the odd harmonics. Square waves were commonly used in early video game sound design, so that's why you may recognize that sound. A little bit of Mario going on. And then a triangle is a square wave, but with the what do you call it? The harmonics have special phase relationships. So if we were to go in here, you can see there are all of these odd harmonics, but then they have this. All right, so tangent. In Citrus, when you go to this oscillator tab up here, you can control the individual harmonics. A good way to think of that is each one of these little bars is just another sine wave, but you stack them on top of each other and you get these more complex waveforms. So if we were to go back to a square here, oops, I forget how to reset this. Okay, so if we were to go to a square, Actually, let's show you a sol first. So we're going to convert this to sine harmonics. So that is a sol wave. So you have, if it was just this initial harmonic, you have a sine wave. And then all of these are stacked on top of each other in mathematic relationship, which is really cool. The Pythagoreans actually believed that the greatest way to know the universe was a combination of philosophy, music, and math. Music and math are really closely related, and it's super cool. So that's a sol wave. Okay, now if we go to a square, again, so odd harmonics. So whereas the sol wave had every one of these filled in, this is a square. Okay, now let's look at a triangle. Triangles are cool. So here's a triangle. Okay, so you see the same thing. Odd harmonics, but less of them. And then this box down here offsets the phase of these waveforms. So for a triangle wave, you have odd harmonics, and then every other odd harmonic is out of phase, which gives us this sound. Anyways, so that's a quick little bit about the basic science of sound. So, again, back to the reason I like Citrus, we can create custom waveforms, and we can modify them in this oscillator tab, and there's 6 of them. Now, let me show you what frequency modulation is. To give you a real-world application of frequency modulation, radio. So in frequency modulation, you have what's called a carrier and a modulator. And the way it works is a carrier is a waveform, such as this, that is carrying the signal of a modulator. And that's how radio works. That's why radio stations are in hertz numbers. So you have a waveform like this that's at, say, 105.3 or 94.9. And then you have the signal that the radio station is putting out modulating that wave. And then to get the radio, you just cancel out that original carrier source, and what you're left with is the content the radio is putting out. So, how do we use that for music? Well, like this. Now, if we pitch that down, cool, right? All right. So, that's how you make dubstep growls. That's how you make a lot of other things too. Frequency modulation is not just useful for making dubstep growls. You can make a lot of things. The possibilities are pretty much endless. But, as I said, frequency modulation is how I like to make my sounds. So what I'm going to do is you're just going to see me twisting some knobs, and I'll explain what I'm doing, but we're going to make a nice bass sound, and then we're going to export it to audio and bring it into Serum and resample it there for more processing. So, here we go. With frequency modulation, you generally start with a pretty clean waveform as the carrier, such as a sine, maybe more of a rounded sine for a little bit fuller of a sine, or even a square. I generally like to start with a little bit of a rounded sine wave, so something like this. So let's just kind of play around and see what we can do. Actually, you know what? Something I've been wanting to try is... So this is the filter function. It's just filtering out the harmonics on an individual basis. So if you were to recall in this window all of the individual harmonics, so we basically have a square wave, and then this filter is filtering out the high harmonics up here and giving us these less harmonic content, but a lot of interesting nodes in the waveform that we can do cool stuff to later. Citrus functionally works is that if we're to go into operator 1, hit the mod tab and mod X, now we can go to the main page and use the axis knob to modulate between all modulation on operator 1 being off and full up here. So full would be right where 2 is fully modulating 1 to where it's set now. And if we were to add more, we can control all of that with one knob. So what I'm going to do is just create a single note and loop it so that I don't have to hold down keys to play notes, and we can just loop it and play with it as it's looping back and forth. So we can have it modulating in real time and play with parameters. And then we are going to also, cool. Now we have the note playing and this knob automated. Let's actually turn that down so you can hear me, so that's not so loud. And as you'll hear me mention a lot in videos, gain staging is really important. When you want the sounds coming out of your synthesizers or sample libraries or whatever it is, coming in at around minus 18 dB, that's what's called the sweet spot. I have mentioned it before and we'll mention it again, but that sweet spot is based off of analog gear where the circuitry was designed to handle the signal and process it best at minus 18 dB. Of course, there's gear that had different sweet spots, but that's the most common one. It's not always applicable with software, but a lot of software does model or emulate analog gear and will have that sweet spot. Even if it doesn't, however, it's good practice. You don't want your signals too hot. You're going to mess up your mix. So let's do it. Okay, so what's happening here is this oscillator is being modulated by this one, which is then being modulated by this one. So you can see in this matrix, oscillator 2 is modulating operator 1. Operator 3 is modulating operator 2. So this is where things get really interesting with citruses. We have 6 of these. We could modulate operator 1 by itself, and we can do it in positive or negative polarity. We could have 3 modulating both 1 and 2. Like that. That's actually really interesting. And then, as a quick note, another really common thing in making dubstep growls is to use a triangle modulator with an added harmonic either here or here. That's going to give you a more vowel-y kind of talky sound. And then we're going to move this up. Let's try up. This will be up 2 octaves for now, but we may go higher. That's already really interesting right there. There is a little bit of a kind of funky pop going on in the low end. So let's see if we can do something about that. It probably has something to do with this carrier oscillator. Yeah, it's definitely something to do with the carrier, but that may not be a big deal if we run it through some distortion, but let's play around here. That's actually really interesting. Let's work with this. I actually really like that how it is. That's probably just good enough harmonic content. I like that. What we can do now, though, is play around with running this through one of these filters. And this is where we get really cool, because we not only have these filters here, but we also have a wave shaper, so we can distort within the plugin. And there are multiple ways to distort, and I'll explain that in a minute. Okay, so what I've done here is I've mapped the cutoff of this low pass filter and the resonance to this X modulator as well. And I've done an inverse relationship on the resonance. So what's happening is when X is down here, the cutoff is somewhere around here. So probably in the low mids, maybe 200 hertz. And then it's opening all the way up to open. And then the resonance is starting off starting off high and coming down to off. Okay, so that's interesting in and of itself. Before we even add distortion, let's just hear what the original sound sounded like. Okay, so some really interesting harmonic content, but not a lot of movement. Good basses have a lot of filter movement, which just adds intrigue and gives it more of a lifelike feeling. If you study how sounds are made in the real world by humans or animals, there's what's called formants. So there's lots of weird resonances that happen in the throat and mouth, and we control those. That's how we make sounds, by changing the our aperture or the way our tongues and mouths are positioned, and it creates different resonances. So by having filter movements, we give things a little bit more of a lifelike feel, a little bit more of a talky feel. So again, without any filter movement, and then with filter movement. And you can hear as it's ramping up, there's a lot of high harmonic content missing, but that's going to be added back in when we play around with some distortion here. So let's go into that. Okay, so what I'm doing with the voices here, when I have 5 voices on, what's essentially happening is I have 5 voices of this guy. What's happening when I turn this on? I'm sorry, I have that backwards. So what's happening when this is on? Is I have 5 of this guy coming out. What's happening now is I not only have 5 of this guy, but 5 instances of this guy going into this filter and this distortion, which is creating a much more interesting sound. See here, this is a little more washed out, and this is keeping my signal in mono, which is going to be really useful for resampling into serum. And with basses, I like to keep things in mono and then just add some dimension expansion, which I'll explain later, to keep things a little bit tighter and more controlled. Let's do something interesting here. We're going to automate the unison phase. So that's how close all of the phase relationships are of each individual of these 5 voices. So let's do this. So without that. We're just creating a little bit more interesting movement when we're at the top of that waveform. Just especially some more interesting movement in the highs, and it's giving the sound a little bit more of a morphing feeling, so we just have a little bit more to work with. That's actually really interesting. So essentially what we're doing now is parallel processing. So we have filter movement and distortion going through the filter, but then some of the dry signal coming out as well. And that's a really good way to get a really fat sound, is parallel processing. So I'm just literally going to play around with these 2 knobs and find a satisfying mix of what would be the dry signal and the wet signal coming out of the filter. That's pretty cool. And then I'm actually just going to put this into a mixer track real quick and check out the frequency spectrum. So let's look at this. Let's look at what's going on. So you can see all of these just interesting little, so the way this plugin works is the thicker and brighter the line is, the more frequency content in that region. So you see just a lot of like rippling effects, and that's because especially with this second oscillator that's detuned, there's a lot, and plus everything else, of course, but especially with some detune going on. And these 5 voices that are just slightly detuned, there's a lot of interesting phase cancellation, meaning sounds at specific frequencies are suddenly canceling each other out and then suddenly not canceling each other out. And that's what's giving this all this movement and this interesting harmonic content. And I am hearing a little bit of an artifact, which is an artifact is just what's left behind by processing. I'm hearing a little bit of an unpleasant artifact that I don't like. I'm going to see if I can find it in the EQ and just take it out before we bounce this to audio. I could play around with these more, but I'm really happy with how this sound is sounding. So I'm just going to play around with that and then probably remove a little bit of the unnecessary low content as well. So I muffled that a little bit and took out some of the rumble, which is going to eat up headroom. We're also going to be able to process this in Serum, but I really like that. Okay, so we are now going to record this. All right. And this was a G. Actually, let's do a C. I know there's supposed to be an optimal frequency to record things at to resample into Serum, but we're just going to go ahead with this. Okay, and now we are going to go into the waveform editor, enter formula. This was recorded at G1. Going to enter that and just drag this in here. And let's see if that worked properly. It doesn't look like it did. I think I need to record it in G0. Yeah. Serum's being funny right now. You know what? Well, that's fantastic. Thanks, Serum. Should have an autosave. So let's just go find that and reopen that. That was very annoying, though. I have to remember where the backup files are now. It always takes me a second. I really thought it was in here. This is great. Oh, you know what? I forgot file location shifted around with FL20. Okay, maybe it's not here. Actually, you know what? Yeah. Okay, this is why we do test runs of things. Okay, so here's one backup folder, but this is not the main backup folder because there are only 2 autosaves in here. I have never had trouble finding the backups before, I swear. I normally remember where it is. And I'm blinking right now. Nope. It should be in data. It should be here. I'm really confused. It should be here. All right, I'm going to stop this recording and I will restart recording and splice these together when I find this motherfucker.